Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. I never really planned on living alone. It just kind of happened. I didn't crave solitude or anything, it just became my normal. My little rental sat at the far edge of town, tucked between cracked sidewalks and old fences that leaned with time. Trees loomed overhead, casting slow-moving shadows that stretched long and thin at dusk. Nothing ever really happened out there. I worked mornings at Beanie's, the only real coffee shop in town. Cozy in a sort of run-down way, chipped ceramic mugs, a rickety ceiling fan, and the scent of burnt espresso permanently baked into the wood walls. My days blurred together. Wake up, work, go home, repeat. The town was sleepy, the kind where people still waved from their porches and the highlight of the week was someone's kid making varsity. Crime wasn't something we talked about, it was something that happened somewhere else. So when things started to feel weird, I brushed it off. Stress, maybe. Overthinking. Too much time in my own head. There was this guy, Ethan, came in almost every day. Tall, thin, plain-looking, black coffee, no sugar, no smile. At first he was background noise, like the ticking of the ancient clock above the register. Always sat in the same corner with an actual newspaper like it was 1995 and he didn't know what Wi-Fi was. Neatly dressed but unmemorable. Until he wasn't. It started small. He made conversation. How's your day going? Got any pets? You grow up around here? Harmless, right? The kind of casual talk that baristas are expected to play along with. I told him about Benny, my Labrador, and that my folks lived a few hours north. The chats were short, even kind of nice. They broke the monotony of steaming milk and wiping counters. Then I noticed, he only came in when I was working, never when Dana or Luis were on shift. If I opened at 5 a.m., he was there before the sun. If I closed, he showed up minutes before lockup. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe our schedules just synced up. That happens. Then one morning, I had the opener. Still dark. 4:30 a.m. A thick fog curled low over the ground like smoke as I pulled into the lot, headlights cutting through the dampness. I was barely awake, rubbing sleep out of my eyes when I saw him. Ethan, standing there, in front of the shop, not on his phone, not pacing, just standing, still, staring at the front door, at me. My stomach tightened. I stayed in the car a second too long, hand frozen on the keys. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. Maybe he's just desperate for caffeine, I told myself. Maybe he's been up all night. I got out, avoiding his eyes, and unlocked the door. Inside, I fired up the espresso machine, its hiss echoing through the stillness. The warmth should have been comforting, but I could feel him, his eyes still watching me from outside. A few minutes passed before he finally came in. Same order, same seat. But this time, he said nothing. Not a single word. No good morning, no questions about Benny, just silence. Something in the room shifted. I could feel it like pressure in my ears, a weight that wasn't there before. He kept coming in after that, like normal. Same coffee, same spot. But the air never felt light again. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe I was. I let it go, until one night. I'd just finished closing and drove home, headlights sweeping across my little lawn. It was mowed, perfectly mowed, every line crisp, neat, symmetrical. I sat in the car, engine still running, just staring. Confused. I hadn't touched the mower in weeks. I lived alone. My neighbors were sweet, sure, but not the type to sneak over with a trimmer. And even if they were, they'd have left a note, mentioned something. I got out slowly, fingers tight around my keys, heart thudding like a drum in my chest. I walked the path to my front door, glancing around, up the street, down the block. No one, not a soul. No one was there. But over the next few days, the weirdness escalated. My overgrown hedges, trimmed into clean, straight lines. The weeds in my flower bed, ones I'd resigned myself to ignoring, gone, as if yanked out one by one. My crooked mailbox, which leaned like a drunk old man, was suddenly standing upright, perfectly aligned. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe one of the neighbors. Some sweet old guy with too much time on his hands. But every time I reached for that explanation, something in my gut twisted. It didn't feel kind. It felt calculated. That's when I started changing how I talked to Ethan. When he asked about Benny, I kept it vague. He's good. Same old. If he poked around about my schedule, what days I'd be working, I'd shrug. They switch it up a lot, I never really know. But I did know. And I knew something else too. Someone had been watching me. It all changed one night. He walked in just before close, same as always. I was behind the counter, wiping down the polished surface, the cafe mostly empty. The lights above were dim, flickering just enough to make everything feel a bit off, like a dream you couldn't fully wake from. Ethan didn't nod this time, didn't smile. He just looked at me. Straight on. His eyes were flat like pond water in winter. Cold, still, too clear. "I think it's time you gave me something in return," he said, quiet and firm. "For all that yard work." I froze, still clutching the damp cloth in my hand. My heart stuttered. I tried to play dumb, even forced out a laugh, though it sounded more like a cough. "I don't even know who's been doing that," I said quickly, waving him off. "Probably one of the neighbors, right? People here are, generous like that." He didn't respond, didn't blink, just took his coffee, turned, and left without another word. And that's when something snapped inside me, a clarity I hadn't felt until then. Ethan wasn't just weird, he was dangerous. That night I was on the closing shift again. The last customer left and slowly the cafe emptied. Chairs flipped onto tables. The espresso machine let out a final hiss as I powered it down. But the dread that had crept into my chest stayed. It pulsed, low and deep, like it was alive. I checked the back door 3 times before locking it. Still didn't help. As I crossed the empty lot to my car, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The air felt too still, too orchestrated, like I was the only actor left in a play no one else was watching. Then, footsteps. Quick, closing in fast behind me. I turned. Ethan. He was coming right at me, one hand diving into his jacket. My mind screamed. He's got a weapon. Oh God, he's got something. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My limbs turned to concrete, but instead of a knife or a gun, he pulled out something small, delicate, dangling from his fingers. It was Timothy, my bird, my sweet dumb parrot who chirped every time I jangled my keys. His tiny body was stiff, limp, neck twisted at a grotesque angle. His wings hung lifeless. He was dead. I don't remember screaming, or running, or even unlocking my car. The next thing I knew, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the key. Tires squealed as I floored it out of the lot, adrenaline drowning my thoughts. But as I pulled into my driveway, everything inside me froze. My front door was wide open. I sat there, engine idling, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Every cell in my body screamed, "Don't go in there. Call the cops. Drive. Just drive. Anywhere." But Benny was inside. My dog. My best friend. My family. I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out the tire iron I kept stashed there, just in case. The metal was cool, almost reassuring in my sweaty grip. I opened the car door slowly. The world around me was dead silent. No crickets, no breeze, not even the rustle of leaves. "Benny," I whispered, stepping past the threshold. The house was still, too still. Living room, untouched. Cushions in place, nothing broken, nothing stolen. But the silence? Wrong. like the walls were holding their breath. Then, footsteps, soft, careful, coming from the kitchen. I raised the tire iron, palms slick, pulse racing. "Who's there?" I croaked, voice barely a whisper. "Hello?" No answer. I moved forward one step at a time, each heartbeat pounding like a drum in my throat. Then, a low growl. I turned. Benny. His fur bristled, lips curled back. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from his throat. His eyes were locked on the pantry door. It was cracked open. And inside, crouched in the shadows, was Ethan. I didn't wait. Didn't think. I charged and swung the tire iron with everything I had. It connected hard. A sickening crack. His shoulder, maybe his head. He crumpled like a rag doll. I grabbed Benny by the collar and ran. We burst out the front door and didn't stop until we were in the car, doors locked, windows up. The police showed up minutes later. Apparently someone had already called. Said Ethan was acting off near the cafe, pacing and muttering. When they searched my place, they found him unconscious in my kitchen, bleeding but alive. They didn't tell me much. Just that he was under investigation. That there had been other reports, other people who'd felt watched, stalked, afraid. I never saw him again. I don't know if he's locked up somewhere, or if he disappeared into another quiet town just like this one. All I know is that he's gone, and I haven't slept the same since. Small town. I was 16 when it happened. Our house sat at the edge of a dying town, one of those blink-and-you-miss-it places surrounded by woods so thick they swallowed light. The trees out there didn't just stand. They loomed, silent, watching, the kind of quiet that made your ears ring. People waved, sure, nodded at the grocery store, but no one really knew each other. And in that kind of silence, things fester. We lived in an old, weather-beaten 2-story house that had been split into 3 apartments. My parents, my little sister Laya, and I were in one of the ground floor units. My grandmother, everyone just called her Baba, lived in the one next to us. The upstairs apartment was locked from the outside, just a glorified storage unit with its own staircase nobody used anymore. Not since before I was born. That summer, both Mom and Dad were pulling double shifts. Long days, late nights. It was mostly just me and Laya at home. At first, we treated it like a little adventure. Ice cream for dinner, movie marathons till dawn. But when I look back, I can't believe how blind I was. The weird creaks that weren't in the usual places. Stuff moving, like a mug ending up on the wrong counter. And that feeling, like the air had weight. Like you were being watched. Even when you were alone. Maybe especially then. I think the first warning came weeks before the break-in. It was one of those hot, breathless afternoons, the kind where sweat sticks to your spine. I was helping Baba put groceries away in her pantry. Her place always smelled like thyme and mothballs. Dim light filtered through the tiny window above the shelves. I was reaching for a can of beans when she suddenly grabbed my arm. "Look," she said, her voice just above a whisper. She pointed to the wall below the pantry window. I didn't get it at first, just some faint grayish smudges on the white paint. But then my eyes adjusted. Footprints, not on the floor, on the wall. Heel, toe, climbing upward, each one deliberate, spaced like someone had walked up the wall. Maybe it's from when Dad fixed the gutter? I offered weakly, though my stomach tightened even as I said it. Baba's face went hard. She didn't scare easy. She'd grown up during wartime, tough as rusted nails, but her jaw clenched and she kept staring at those prints like they might move. "No," she said. "He didn't come through here." The hair on my arms prickled. I closed the window. She locked the pantry door. Neither of us said anything more. That night I couldn't sleep. The house always made noise. Old wood settling, pipes rattling. But that night was different. Every sound had an edge to it, like the house wasn't resting. It was alerting. Each creak felt like footsteps, every gust of wind like a breath on the back of my neck. And then, a week later, I heard them for real. It was past midnight. I was under the covers with a flashlight, reading a battered Stephen King novel. Laya was asleep next door. I could hear her soft, rhythmic breathing through the wall. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the trees. Then, crunch. I froze. Not the house, not a pipe. Outside, in the yard, crunch. Again, closer this time. Someone was walking. Slow, careful, like they didn't want to be heard. My pulse hammered. I turned off the flashlight and went perfectly still. My hand fumbled for my phone, but it was so slick with sweat I nearly dropped it. I wanted to check the cameras, maybe call Dad, but some ancient part of me buried in bone screamed, "Don't move, don't even breathe." Predator instincts. Then, nothing. Just wind. Long, stretching silence. After what felt like hours, I crept to the window, peeled the curtain back an inch, just enough to see the yard. It was empty. But then I saw it. Dad's old ladder, the aluminum one we hadn't touched in months, was no longer leaning on the shed. It was propped against the side of the house, right beneath the second-story window, the locked one, the one to the empty apartment. At breakfast, I told my parents. My hands were shaking just holding the spoon. Dad frowned, staring at his plate. "Could have been a raccoon," he said, like he was trying to convince himself. "Or a drunk, maybe. Somebody lost after the bar closed." Mom nodded, not even looking up from her coffee. But Baba didn't say a word. She just kept staring out the window like she was waiting for something. Or someone. Later that afternoon, she found me on the porch, pretending to do homework. She sat beside me, didn't say anything for a minute. Then she reached out and gently took my wrist. "Luca," she said, voice low, breath smelling faintly of mint and tobacco. "Listen to me. There's something wrong with that man." Baba's voice was soft, but it cut through me like ice. I stiffened, barely breathing. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. I felt it. She didn't respond right away, just gave a tiny nod toward the house across the street. You couldn't miss it, an old sagging corpse of a place with a porch that looked ready to collapse and shutters that clattered in the wind like loose teeth. Paint peeled in long strips. The yard was a tangle of waist-high grass and broken memories. It hadn't seen a mower or a human touch in years. "Milan," she whispered. The name made my stomach turn. I barely knew him. No one really did. He lived there, sure, kept to himself, moved like a ghost. Now and then he'd shuffle to the corner store with a paper bag and bloodshot eyes. People said he drank too much, maybe dabbled in harder stuff. Word around town was he had a record, petty theft, bar fights, that kind of thing. But mostly, he was just there. A shape in a window, a door that never opened. Baba leaned in, her breath warm and faintly herbal. I see him watching. I felt a chill climb my spine. Watching what? She didn't blink, just stared at me with those storm-gray eyes that never missed anything. Us. 2 weeks later, everything made sense. It was early, still dark, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. Then, crash. Glass. I shot up in bed, heart hammering against my ribs. For a second I thought I was dreaming, but then, another crash. Louder. Closer. Panic gripped my chest like a vice. I sat frozen, listening. Then came the creak of wood, the front porch step. You don't forget that sound once you've lived with it. Legs shaking, I stumbled to the window and peeled the curtain back an inch. There was someone in the yard, a man, standing still near the side of the house. A brick hung limp in his hand. His back was to me, but something about the way he stood, tight shoulders, head tilted, made my skin crawl. He turned, our eyes locked, gaunt face, hollow cheeks, skin drawn tight like parchment, eyes, huge, sunken, unfocused. He didn't look at me. He looked through me. Milan. We stared at each other, both frozen. Then he dropped the brick. It hit the ground with a dull thunk. He spun and sprinted straight into the woods behind our house, silent, fast. I didn't think. I moved, grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand, and bolted out the door barefoot, adrenaline drowning out the cold grass and sharp stones underfoot. But he was gone. Vanished into the trees like smoke. The cops came about an hour later, lights sweeping across the house like searchlights in a prison break. But by then, there was nothing to find. No footprints, no broken trail, just the shattered window and that sick feeling in the pit of my gut. One of the officers, a guy with a tired face and a flannel shirt beneath his vest, leaned over to Dad. "He's been in and out of jail for years," he murmured, flipping through a little spiral notebook. "Drugs mostly, some BE, theft. But this..." He shook his head. "This is different. We'll find him." And they did. 2 days later, Milan was found holed up in a half-collapsed shed near the outskirts of town. He was filthy, clothes soaked in urine, hair tangled with leaves. He talked to himself in circles, gibberish mostly, but never looked anyone in the eye. They arrested him without a struggle. But that wasn't what haunted me. It was what they found in his house, buried under piles of trash, moldy food containers, dirty laundry, yellowed newspapers. They uncovered a collection of stolen items, random things that didn't make sense until they did. My old hoodie, one of our kitchen knives, Laya's pink plastic hairbrush. But worse, so much worse, was the notebooks. Dozens of them, maybe more. Crumbling pages filled with shaky writing and strange symbols. Lists of names, scribbled maps of the neighborhood, dates, observations. And on one page, near the back, repeated over and over in dark, smudged ink, "She's always alone at night." I couldn't breathe. Laya's bedroom window faced his house. She never shut her curtains, not once. We moved within a month, packed what we needed, and left the rest behind. Drove away without looking back, like so many families who know better than to chase answers they'll never want to hear. It's been years now. Different town, different life. But some nights, I still wake up with my heart pounding, ears straining for footsteps on the porch, for glass breaking in the dark. Because the worst part wasn't the break-in, it was knowing he'd been watching us for a long, long time. I was 21 when everything went sideways. I'd spent my whole life in Cold Creek, North Dakota, a town so small the welcome sign could have doubled as a goodbye. Winters there weren't just cold, they were cruel, the kind that peeled the paint off your truck and your spirit if you weren't tough enough. Everyone knew everyone. Friday nights meant either bonfires or watching the high school team lose by 20. Most folks stayed put, inherited the farm, married their high school sweetheart, and died in the same bed they were born in. I figured I'd be one of them. Farming ran in my blood like diesel. My dad worked that land before me, and his dad before him. Same busted tractor, same stretch of fields that never quite yielded what they promised. But it was ours. Back then, I had two best friends, Brady and Connor. Brady was 2 years younger but wild and loyal, the kind of guy who'd shotgun a beer at your mom's funeral if he thought it'd make you smile. He had this thunder laugh that made your ribs ache, and he was always down for whatever. Midnight drives, ice fishing, sneaking into abandoned barns. Then there was Connor. He was the quiet one. Thoughtful, sharp-eyed, always looking past the horizon like he saw something we didn't. He worked at a John Deere dealership out in Rugby and talked about transferring to Bismarck State. Mortgage, career, future. He was serious like that. Summer of 22 had this strange promise to it, like maybe we were about to level up. I was with Sarah, this girl I thought I'd put a ring on someday. Brady was lifeguarding at the town pool, hitting on every girl who could dog paddle. Connor was pulling in real paychecks, looking at college applications between oil changes. Then, September came, and everything cracked. Sarah dumped me. said she needed more than cow shit and rusty dreams. Brady's summer girl ghosted him, left a note and her perfume on his hoodie. And Connor? He just quit, dropped out of school, stopped showing up, no warning, just silence. We all spun out in our own ways. Brady started picking up double shifts at the grain elevator, trying to outwork his heartbreak. I holed up in my dad's workshop, elbows deep in busted machinery, the radio mumbling old country songs while I tried not to think. But Connor changed. It began subtle. One night we were all in the shop, tossing darts, drinking cheap beer, pretending nothing hurt. Hank Williams crackled from the corner speaker. Brady was mid-story about some girl from Glenfield when Connor just cut in, his voice low. "We need to get right with God," he said. Brady blinked. "What? Like, go to church more?" Connor didn't smile. "No. I mean really get right. No halfway bullshit." Now, in Cold Creek, belief wasn't optional. Whether you were a Bible thumper or just showed up for Easter, everyone had some kind of faith. But Connor? That night, his words didn't sound like belief. They sounded like warning. Like he knew something we didn't. It chilled me. A few weeks later, I was driving back from class. Wind howling like it always does in October. My truck rattling like it might fall apart. I was thinking about Sarah, about all the things I should have said when my phone rang. It was Connor. "You free tonight?" he asked. "Come to church. We should pray about her. About everything." Something in his tone caught me. Not begging, not angry, just calm, too calm. Before I could think, I found myself taking the exit toward town. The church looked like it always had, brick weathered by decades of blizzards, its windows dusty and dark. It sat lonely beside an empty gas station and a frozen cornfield, as if it had been forgotten by time. Inside, the air smelled like mold and wax. A few flickering lights buzzed above us, casting long shadows. We sat in the back, boots thudding softly on the threadbare carpet. Connor bowed his head. "Lord," he whispered, "make your plans clear for him. Help him let go, or bring her back if it's your will." His voice was steady, reverent. Then I heard it. "She's coming back." The whisper slithered past my ear, barely more than breath, but not mine, and not his. I froze. My stomach flipped. I stared straight ahead, chest tight. "You hear that?" I murmured. Connor looked at me, his brow creased. "Hear what?" I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Nothing," I lied. But something had spoken, and deep down, I knew it hadn't lied. Or maybe that's what it wanted me to believe. After that night, Connor started changing for real. His prayers got darker, more intense. He talked about visions, about spirits, about end times and blood moons and things that spoke to him in the silence. Brady and I laughed it off at first. We said it was stress. Maybe the breakup hit him weird, but he stopped laughing with us, started looking at us like we were the blind ones. "I can feel when something's evil," he told us one night, fingers tracing the cracked leather of his Bible like it had secrets in the margins. His eyes had that far-off gleam again, like he wasn't talking to us anymore, like something else was listening. I could just feel it. Something was breaking in Connor, and it was getting harder to pretend it wasn't. Prayer nights weren't just about peace anymore. They turned into something else, more feverish. He'd close his eyes, throw his hands up, and start babbling in this thick, guttural mess of syllables that didn't sound like any language I'd ever heard. It wasn't just strange, it was frightening, like he wasn't in the room with us anymore. He said it was the Holy Spirit moving through him. Brady and I just stared sometimes, unsure whether to bow our heads or call someone. When we didn't join in, he'd look at us with this quiet disappointment that felt like getting slapped. "You don't have enough faith," he told us one night. His eyes were wild. "That's why you can't feel it." It felt like a challenge, like we were failing some test he thought only he understood. Then he up and quit his job. Just walked out of the John Deere dealership one morning. Didn't tell anyone, never looked back. When they officially let him go, He smiled, told us God had called him to something higher. That's when I knew. We weren't just losing him. We already had. It all came to a head during harvest. My dad needed help finishing the last few runs before the frost locked us out for good. So I skipped Connor's worship night. He called me around 9. I still had dirt under my nails, hands stained with grease. I was exhausted. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. "You really choosing farming over God?" he asked. Calm. Too calm. Something in me snapped. "If I don't work, I don't eat," I said flatly. Then I hung up. Didn't even let him reply. After that, Brady and I pulled back. We still loved him. Hell, he was like a brother. But whatever road he was on, we weren't on it anymore. Then came Mary. She was 24, fresh out of a breakup, soft-spoken, kind, lost in that way people get when they're desperate for meaning. She started showing up to Connor's prayer nights, and we didn't think much of it. A lot of people in Cold Creek were looking for something, especially in the winter months when everything felt dead. But something was different about her, about how they took her in. She changed, fast, cut off her parents, burned a whole box of childhood keepsakes, photos, letters, even this hand-carved chest her grandfather made for her. Connor told her it was cursed, said it had hidden evil symbols. She didn't question him, just lit a match and watched it all turn to ash. Then he renamed her. "Mary," he said one night, late into one of their secret gatherings. "Your real name was given to you by people who don't understand God's plan. This is who you were always meant to be." She believed him, every damn word. Her parents panicked, called the local pastor. Connor had aligned himself with some outsider, this intense, charismatic guy who'd rolled into town months back and started gathering people like a magnet. At first, he agreed to meet, but when her folks mentioned they wanted to bring Brady's dad, one of the most respected pastors in the county, the invitation was revoked. Just like that. "We changed our minds," was all they said. Months later, her parents cornered Connor outside a town hall meeting, demanded to know what the hell he'd done to their daughter. All he said was, "You don't want to know." Then he turned around and walked off. Mary moved in with the new pastor's family. Her parents tried everything: legal action, letters, church intervention. Nothing stuck. She was gone. Not physically, spiritually. Whatever Connor had convinced her of, it swallowed her whole. But it didn't stop there. The final straw came when Connor turned on Brady. We were at one of those prayer nights, the tension already thick. Connor suddenly fixed his gaze on him, sharp, almost cruel. "Your mom does yoga," he said, dead serious. "That's witchcraft." Brady blinked. "What?" "Your dad lets it happen. He permits evil in your home. He's corrupted too." Now Brady had stood by Connor through everything, way longer than I had. But that night, something inside him broke. "You don't get to decide who's good and who isn't," he snapped. "You're not God, Connor." Connor didn't respond, just stared at him, jaw clenched, like he wanted to say something but didn't need to. The next day, Brady's family got doxxed. Connor posted their address, their full names, even pictures of their church. He dumped it all in some radical online forum filled with religious extremists. Called them heretics, false believers, traitors. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just silence. He disappeared. Some say he's still in Cold Creek, hiding behind closed doors. Others think he left, moved on to another town, another Mary, another flock. I don't know. And maybe I don't want to. Brady and I still talk, still pray for him. But we both know the truth. Connor, the real Connor, is gone. And me? I still think about that night in the church, that voice. She's coming back. She never did. Sarah moved on, got engaged last I heard. But sometimes when it's real late, and I'm alone in the shop or lying awake in the old farmhouse, and the wind finally goes still, I swear I hear it again. That same voice, cold, quiet, right behind me, waiting. And I can't help but wonder, was it ever God's voice at all? I still don't know how to talk about what happened. It's been 2 years and I still wake up drenched in sweat, chest pounding like I'm back in those woods, calling his name, straining to hear a voice that never came. The fear, it never left. It just learned how to sit quiet in the corners of my life, waiting. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, small things, odd glances, off feelings, the kind of gut twinges you ignore because you don't want to ruin a good day. It was fall when everything changed. My brothers, Matt, Ryan, and I were planning our yearly trip to the Ashwood Fall Festival, a sleepy little tradition in a blink-and-you-miss-it town tucked away in the West Virginia hills. Folks came from all over for the cider, the hay rides, bluegrass bands. But for us, it was about the cars. Always the cars. The Sunday we went, late September, was warm and soft around the edges. The kind of day that tricks you into thinking summer's still got something left. The drive took maybe an hour and a half from our place in Charleston. I was 27 then. Matt was 30, the dependable one. Always thinking ahead, maybe a little too serious. Ryan was 23. He had a heart so big it made him blind to trouble sometimes. Eager to help, always the first to carry someone else's load. We were close. Real close. Grew up rebuilding engines in Dad's garage, dreaming about cruising cross-country in a '69 Camaro. That year's festival was supposed to have the biggest car show they'd ever done. So we loaded up early, thermoses, folding chairs, and Matt's ancient GPS, and headed for Ashwood. Ashwood's not much. Just a few old brick storefronts, a rundown gas station with one pump, and a diner that still has a jukebox. The kind of place time gave up on. When we crossed the town limit, all our phones lost signal. Just flatlined. No texts, no maps, no calls. I remember cussing, low under my breath. I hated that, being cut off, even for a day. We parked near the edge of a riverside park. Ground was soft, covered in damp leaves. From there, it was a 15-minute walk into the main part of town. To get there, you had to cross 2 long wooden bridges stretched over the slow, silty river. The morning light was still low, filtering through the trees like honey. We were laughing about something, probably Ryan's old Civic that wheezed on hills, when she stepped out of the trees, just before the second bridge. A woman, mid to late 20s maybe, Asian, long dark hair, neat but windswept, red sweater, bright as blood against the gold and brown of fall. She smiled, soft and careful. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm looking for the festival. Could you help me?" I glanced at Matt. The sounds of the festival, kids yelling, carnival rides, live music drifted clearly across the river. We were maybe 5 minutes away. "We're heading there now," I said, pointing across the bridge. "You can't miss it." But she didn't move, her brows knit slightly. "I'm actually looking for a specific event, the Heritage Hall exhibit. Do you know where that is?" I did. Small building at the far end of town, back near the woods. Quiet. Easy to miss unless you were looking. Before I could answer, Ryan stepped forward with that wide open smile of his. "I can take you," he offered. "Not far from here. I was headed that way anyway." I paused. Something about her expression gave me chills. Not scared exactly, just tight. Like she was waiting on something, testing us. But Matt clapped Ryan on the shoulder like it was nothing. "Catch up at the car show, yeah?" Ryan gave a thumbs up and turned, walking with her across the bridge. That was the last time I saw my brother. Matt and I went to the car show. Didn't think twice. Just figured Ryan was doing his usual thing, being nice, maybe flirting. The cars distracted us. Rows of restored beauties, Chevelles, GTOs, Chargers. You lose track of time around that kind of shine. Hours passed. I glanced at my watch around noon, frowned. "Ryan should be back by now," I said. Matt looked up from the engine of a '69 Charger. "Maybe he's still chatting her up," he said with a smirk. Wouldn't be the first time. But 2 turned into 3. Then 4. We walked up and down the festival, weaving through families and food stalls, eyes scanning every face. No Ryan. No woman in the red sweater. By then my stomach was a knot. We tried calling him again, still no signal. Backtracked to the edge of town. Found a rust-covered payphone outside the diner. I jammed coins in and dialed his number. It rang, and rang. No answer. By 6, I couldn't pretend anymore. Something was wrong. Matt knew it too. He stopped trying to play calm. We were running now. Past the booths, the cider stands, pushing through crowds, calling his name. No one had seen him. Finally, around 7:30, with the sky dimming and lights strung between the trees beginning to flicker on, we spotted a cop leaning against his patrol SUV, sipping coffee like he had all the time in the world. I walked up fast, trying not to sound panicked. "Officer," I said, breath shaky. "Our brother. He's missing. He left with a woman hours ago. He hasn't come back." The cop blinked like it was the first time anything had happened all day. The cop raised an eyebrow and straightened up slowly. "How long's he been gone?" "Since about 10:30 this morning," Matt said, rubbing the back of his neck. "He said he was helping a woman find Heritage Hall. Never came back." That got the officer's attention. His face shifted, still skeptical, but now alert. He reached for the radio clipped to his vest and called it in, speaking in quick bursts of code. Then he jotted down Ryan's description. 23 years old, 5'10", brown hair, green hoodie, jeans. But I could already see the doubt forming behind his eyes. There were hundreds of people packed into town that day. One guy disappearing in the middle of that chaos might as well have vanished into smoke. By 8:08 p.m., the festival was shutting down. Booths clattered closed, the laughter faded, the music stopped. Street lamps flickered to life over empty sidewalks. A place that had felt so alive hours earlier now looked like a ghost town in an old movie. Ryan was still gone. We walked back to the Riverside parking lot, hoping, praying, he'd be there, leaning against the car with some dumb story about getting sidetracked. But the lot was silent. Just the wind rustling through the trees, pushing leaves across the pavement like dry whispers. No Ryan. At 9 sharp, a park ranger wandered up to us. Tall guy, wiry frame, face lined like he hadn't had a good night's sleep in years. "Park's closing, fellas," he said, voice casual. "Gotta clear out." "We can't," Matt replied, his voice raw and stretched thin. "Our brother's missing, he never came back." The ranger stopped mid-step. His tired eyes sharpened. "You report it?" "We talked to a cop," I said. Gave him the details. Still nothing. He gave a slow nod and pulled his radio from his belt, relaying what we told him to Ashwood PD again. Then he looked at us, voice quieter this time. "I'll hang around the lot for a bit, just in case he shows." It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like someone still cared. We checked into the only motel that had a vacancy. $39.99 a night. Fake wood paneling, buzzing fluorescent lights, a mini fridge that hummed like it was dying. We left voicemails on Ryan's number even though we knew he wouldn't hear them. Still, we hoped. Maybe he'd borrow a phone. Maybe he'd call. Maybe it was all just some terrible misunderstanding. But he didn't. The next morning, the truth settled on us like a weight we couldn't lift. Ryan wasn't late. He wasn't lost. He was gone. We went to the local station and filed a missing person report. This time the cops were serious. But it was Ashwood. Small town. Not enough people. Too many tourists clogging the streets. Resources stretched thin. For the next week, Matt and I tore that town apart. We printed flyers, hung them on poles and gas pumps, knocked on doors, asked every damn person we met. We searched the woods, combed the riverside, checked motels, campgrounds, even barns. Nothing. Some locals were kind. A few remembered seeing Ryan. Most didn't. Nobody had any real answers. Then COVID hit. Everything stopped. The police effort, the tips, the whole damn country. It all froze in place. And with it, our search. Time passed like molasses. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. And Ryan became a memory we weren't ready to mourn. After the 1-year mark, we almost stopped. Almost. Then, 2 years later, just days before Christmas, I got the call. It was the Ashwood police chief. I'll never forget his voice. Dry, slow, uncertain. "We found Ryan," he said. "You and your brother need to come down here. Now." Matt and I didn't pack. We didn't think. We just got in the truck and drove, headlights cutting through the snowfall like searchlights, the silence between us loud enough to deafen. When we arrived, the chief was waiting. He sat us down in his office, wood paneling, old coffee smell, a heater that clicked with every gust. His hands were folded tight, but they trembled. "There was a raid," he began. "Trailer on the edge of town. Neighbors called in about noise, drug activity, weapons, even stolen goods." My stomach dropped. "In one of the back rooms," he continued, "we found your brother. Alive. Ryan. He'd been tied up. Starved. Bruised so bad his skin looked mottled and yellow. His eyes were hollow. Bloodshot, like he hadn't really seen in a long time. Hair was matted, clothes hanging off him like rags, drugged out of his mind. But he was breathing. At the hospital, I barely recognized him. But when he opened his eyes, those wide, terrified eyes, I knew. It was still Ryan, broken, but alive. When he could finally speak, he told us everything. The woman led him behind a building near Heritage Hall, said it was a shortcut. Then, out of nowhere, 3 men jumped him. No time to scream. They threw him into the back of an old rusted white ice cream truck, knocked him out cold and vanished. They took him to that trailer. And for 2 years, they kept him there. They chained him, drugged him, used him, sold him. He tried to escape twice. Each time they beat him so badly he thought he'd die. But somehow he didn't. Somehow he held on. The 3 men were part of a trafficking ring. Ryan wasn't the first they'd taken. Probably not the last. All 3 were arrested. 1 died in jail within a month, stabbed in a fight. The other 2 are rotting in prison for life. But the woman? Gone. Like smoke in the trees. No name, no trace. No one knew who she was. The trailer was burned to the ground. Locals didn't want it anywhere near their town anymore. Couldn't blame them. As for Ryan, he survived. But survival comes with scars. He lives with us now, quiet, withdrawn. He jumps at loud sounds, won't sleep without a light on. Most days he doesn't talk much, but he's here, and that's enough. We never went back to Ashwood. We never will. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the past creeps in, I think about the others. The ones no one found. The ones no one's even looking for. So if you ever find yourself at a small town festival, and someone steps out of the trees with a perfect smile, asking for help, think twice before you follow. I never believed in ghost stories. Cryptids, demons, none of it. I figured they were just the kind of creepy tales people told around campfires or late at night when boredom got the best of them. Urban legends to spice up otherwise boring lives. I always thought, if it's real, then prove it. I needed evidence. Tangible, solid proof. That was before everything changed. Before I started checking over my shoulder every few minutes. Before I started listening, really listening for sounds that didn't belong. Before I started dreading the night. My name's Evan Carter. I grew up in a beat-down little town clinging to the edge of the Appalachian foothills. One of those places where the gas station doubles as a diner and the woman who rings you up can tell you your mom's maiden name. Gossip moves faster than cell reception ever did out there, and privacy's more myth than reality. Folks always said, nothing ever happens around here. But that wasn't true. Things happened. They just didn't talk about them. You could feel it, even as a kid. People locked their doors way before sunset. Porch lights clicked off early. If someone went missing, whispers floated around for a day or two, maybe a half-hearted search. Then nothing. No vigils. No posters. Just silence. Like everyone agreed, pretend it didn't happen and maybe it'd go away. But I can't pretend anymore. It started December 2019. I remember because that night was the last time I ever felt truly safe. Nate was over, my best friend since we were both missing our front teeth in second grade. We were holed up in my basement, controllers in hand, grinding through another round of Call of Duty. Just two guys wasting time, laughing, shouting over headsets, not a care in the world. Then Nate paused the game. "Evan," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. Wouldn't even look at me. Something about his voice stopped me cold. It was low, tense, like he was trying to hold something in. "You good?" I asked, putting the controller down. "What's up?" He took a breath. Long. Shaky. The kind you take when you're about to say something you wish you didn't have to. "Something's been following me," he said. I blinked. "Like a stalker?" He shook his head, slow. "Not a person. I don't know what it is, man. But it's real." I waited for him to crack a grin, to mess with me like he always did. But his face didn't move. No smirk, just that grim, clenched expression. "It's the footsteps," he said. "Outside my window, almost every night. Slow, heavy, like someone pacing back and forth. And the tapping. It taps on the glass. Light, rhythmic. Like it wants me to know it's there, but not wake anyone else up." "Maybe it's a raccoon or something," I said, even though my gut had already gone tight. Nate shot me a look. "You ever hear footsteps upstairs when you know nobody's home?" I hesitated. "No." "Well, I have. And it doesn't just walk around. It stops, right above my bed. Just stands there, breathing." "Breathing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Yeah. This deep, rattling sound. Like it's choking or something, but it won't stop. It just stands there. And I feel it, Evan. Watching me." Nate wasn't some scared little kid. This was the same guy who'd sneak out into the woods at night just to prove he wasn't afraid. He laughed at horror movies. Seeing him like this, shaken, serious, it messed me up in a way I didn't expect. "I'll help you," I said. "We'll figure it out." That was my first mistake. A week later, it started happening to me. At first it was subtle. Just a creeping feeling, like a sliver sliding under your skin. I'd be walking home from Nate's late at night, and all of a sudden I'd know something was behind me. Not paranoia, not imagination. Something older, primal. The kind of feeling that tightens your chest and makes your feet feel like cinder blocks. I'd stop, turn around. Nothing. But I felt it. Always just out of sight. Then came the sounds. It started with footsteps on the roof. Not the quick patter of a raccoon or the light scurry of a stray cat. No, these were deliberate, heavy, measured, like someone was pacing above me, lost in thought, thinking, and it only ever happened when I was alone. Dad worked nights at the mill, long shifts that bled into morning. Mom? She'd packed up and left when I was 10. So most nights, it was just me in the silence. I told myself it was nothing. A squirrel, maybe. The old house settling. Wood creaks, pipes groaning. All the excuses you cling to when you want to believe you're safe. But then came the tapping. Not at the window. On the walls. The outside of my room. First the west wall, then the north, then back again like it was circling. Each tap was precise, calm, spaced out. Like whatever it was had all the time in the world. No urgency, no rush. Sometimes it would stop long enough for me to think maybe it was over. Then it would start again, Closer. Always closer. I started sleeping with my lamp on. A soft yellow bulb that buzzed faintly, casting long shadows on my bedroom walls. But even with the light, sleep barely came. And when it did, it was shallow, twitchy, like my body didn't trust me enough to rest. Then came the night that told me, without a doubt, this wasn't all in my head. I was lying in bed, phone in hand, scrolling Reddit, earbuds in, trying to lose myself in a podcast. Something about UFO sightings, background noise to keep the silence at bay. That's when the air changed. You know that feeling when someone walks into a room and you feel them before you see them? That shift in pressure? The tension that makes your skin tighten, makes your ears perk up? It was like that. Something was there, in the dark, watching. I yanked out one earbud. My heart was pounding in my throat. And then, clear as day, I heard it. A whisper, right beside my bed. Not a voice, not even a word, just breath, rasping, strained, like something trying to mimic a voice but not understanding how the human throat works. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't scream. Just stared straight up at the ceiling, paralyzed. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. Something was in the room. The whisper came again. Quiet, broken, like wind dragging itself across broken glass. It didn't sound like a language. Not English. Not anything I'd ever heard. Just guttural noise, deep and animal-like. Like a creature trying to copy human sounds but getting it wrong. Horribly wrong. I sat up slowly, my skin damp with sweat, heartbeat in my ears. And that's when I realized the sound wasn't in the room anymore. It was outside the window, right behind the glass. I wanted to look. God, I wanted to look. But something primal inside me screamed, "Don't. Just don't." Then came the breathing, wet, struggling, like something sucking in air through lungs filled with water, gasping, wheezing. It was inches from me, just on the other side of that thin pane of glass. The room wasn't cold, but I was. Ice running through my veins. I didn't sleep. I don't even think I blinked. As soon as the sky started to lighten, I grabbed my jacket and left. Straight to Nate's. He opened the door before I even knocked, like he'd been waiting. He looked awful. Bloodshot eyes, hair a tangled mess, face pale. "You heard it too, didn't you?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, my throat too dry to form words. He rubbed his hands through his hair, pacing a little. "What the hell is it, Evan?" I had no answer, just fear. The kind that doesn't come from a dream. The kind that lingers. He stood silent for a second, then muttered, "It's getting worse." I followed him inside. The living room was dark, curtains still drawn, though it was well past dawn. He dropped onto the couch and stared at the floor. "2 nights ago," he said, "I woke up around 3. Just snapped awake. No noise, no dream. Just bam. Eyes open." He looked up at me, his voice trembling. My door was open. Nate always locked his door. Always. Ever since we were kids. One of his weird rules. "I know I locked it," he said. "I know I did." So I turned on the light, and that's when I saw it. He swallowed hard. "Just for a second," he whispered. It was standing in the corner. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. What did it look like?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared past me, like he was remembering something he wished he could forget. "Tall," he said finally. "Too tall." Its head almost touched the ceiling. And its eyes. He shuddered. They didn't reflect the light. They ate it, like they were pulling it in. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. Something was here, and it wasn't done with us. I tried to throw Nate a lifeline. "You sure you weren't dreaming?" "I wish I was," he muttered. His voice didn't crack, but his eyes gave him away. Red, glassy, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. Maybe both. We were losing it. Or maybe we weren't. That night, we decided to find out. We set up an old camera in my room, Nate's idea, positioned it to face the window, right where I'd heard the breathing. If something was really out there, we'd catch it. We thought we were being smart. We shouldn't have done that. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a mug of cold coffee, and the worst sense of dread crawling up my spine. My laptop was already open, the footage loaded. My hand was shaking before I even hit play. The first few hours were what you'd expect, me tossing and turning, blankets kicking off, flipping the pillow a few times. Normal stuff. Uneasy, but normal. Then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., something shifted. The window, dark and still, flickered with movement. I paused, rewound, watched it frame by frame. At first, it looked like a raccoon or maybe a stray dog. Something hunched, then it stood up and kept standing, way too tall. Its head cleared the top of the window frame, and the frame was over 6 feet off the ground. Its limbs were long, stretched too far in places that shouldn't stretch, like someone had grabbed a human silhouette and pulled it from the corners. Then came the tapping. Each tap was deliberate, measured, like it wanted me to hear every single one. It wasn't just making noise, it was communicating. Then it leaned forward. For the briefest, most horrible moment, I saw its face, if you could call it that. No eyes, just deep, hollow sockets where eyes should be, like someone had scooped them out. And the mouth, it didn't open. It split, right down the center, stretching in both directions like a paper tear. No expression, no lips, no humanity. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen nearly cracked. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. A minute later, Nate called. His voice was just above a whisper. "It knows we're watching," he said. "It knows, Evan." That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak made my chest tighten. Every rustle outside made me grip the bedsheets like they could save me. I tried telling myself it wasn't real, that my brain was screwing with me, that I was tired, fragile. But when the tapping returned, my blood ran cold. Then it stopped. 3:12 a.m., right on the dot. My bedroom door creaked open, not all at once, slow, like someone didn't want to wake me, like it was testing how quiet it could be. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I turned my head, slowly, every inch a fight. And there it was, a shape in the doorway, too tall. Its head bent sideways to clear the frame, like its neck didn't have joints, just soft meat and bone that flexed wrong. The body, it didn't move like a person. Limbs out of sync, shoulders too high, fingers twitching, like it had bones, but someone put them together wrong. And the breathing, it filled the room, wet, shallow, like it was learning how to inhale. I couldn't scream, couldn't blink. I just stared, locked in place, and then, just like that, it was gone. No footsteps, no sound, nothing. Gone. At sunrise, I packed a bag, no plan, no goodbye. I didn't even leave a note for my dad. I just left. I haven't been back since. I don't plan to. I still don't know what it was. A cryptid? A spirit? Something older? Something worse? All I know is, it wanted us to see it. And once we did, it never stopped. So if you ever get that feeling, that crawling sensation that someone's watching you from the dark, don't look. Don't acknowledge it. Because once you do, it acknowledges you back. I don't know if anyone reading this will believe me. Hell, I wouldn't believe me a few years ago. But if you've felt it, seen something like it, please, tell me I'm not the only one. This world's full of small towns. Some of them have secrets. It was junior year when it happened, back before smartphones ruled our lives, when payphones still stood on street corners like forgotten ghosts. I was at a university nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, wrapped in forests so thick and roads so winding it felt like you might fall off the edge of the world if you took a wrong turn. The town was stuck in time, one crumbling main street, a row of tired storefronts, and a couple of dive bars where students and locals sat side by side, nursing beers and mutual resentment. You could feel it, the divide. Locals barely tolerated us. We brought money, rent checks, beer runs, late-night pizzas, but we were just passing through, tourists with textbooks. They knew we'd vanish in 4 years while they stayed, patching roofs, ringing up groceries, holding tight to what little was left of their town. Some ignored us, others just scowled. But then there was Calvin Briggs. Everyone knew about Calvin before they met him. His name passed through whispers like a storm warning. "Watch out for Briggs," they'd say. "Don't make eye contact." He was a regular at the Rusty Stag, the only bar that hadn't tried to chase us off. The stories were always the same. Mean, volatile, hated students with a deep, weird kind of venom. He had a habit of picking targets. Clean-cut guys, confident types, the kind who looked like they had somewhere better to be. One weekend he'd slid into some frat guy's booth, just sat there staring, didn't say a damn word for 5 minutes. Then, under the table, he grabbed one kid's thigh like he owned him. When the guy shoved him back, Calvin snapped, smashed his fist into the kid's face so hard he hit the floor like a sack of bricks. The others jumped in, but Calvin dropped them too. No one stopped him, not the bartender, not the regulars, not even the off-duty cop nursing a bud at the bar. The guy ended up in the hospital. Calvin walked out like he'd finished a cigarette. So by the next Saturday, I was done. "Let's teach this bastard a lesson," I muttered to my friends as we huddled outside the dorm. My voice was quiet but steady. I meant it. I wasn't some hothead looking for glory. My dad raised me to stand my ground. "Don't go looking for fights," he'd said, "but don't back down from 'em either." I'd hustled enough pool and poker in back rooms to help cover tuition, learned to read people, their tells, the way their hands moved before they struck. And Calvin? From what I'd heard, he always went for the gut, so I prepped. Before we left, I duct-taped old magazines around my stomach under my sweatshirt. Felt stupid as hell doing it, but maybe it'd save a rib. Slipped an empty glass Coke bottle into the inside pocket of my jacket. Not a weapon, not yet, but heavy, solid, just in case. By 11:30, we were posted up in a corner booth at the Stag, one chair left open like bait. We drank cheap beer, laughed too loudly, tried to look normal, but inside, we were all coiled wire. "He's here," my friend Nate murmured, barely moving his lips. I didn't look. None of us did. We just waited. Then, just like clockwork, he sat down. Calvin Briggs. No words, just dropped into the empty seat like he'd been invited. He had that presence, big, oily, mean. Like the room darkened just a notch when he arrived. Conversations around us flickered out. Even the jukebox skipped a beat. Everyone was watching now. I turned, slow, met his eyes, gave him a tight smile, polite as a pastor. "Hey." He didn't respond, just reached under the table and grabbed my thigh. Hard. Fingers like steel bolts, digging in, possessive, daring me. His face was stone, his breath hot with whiskey and something worse, something foul like garbage left out too long. I didn't flinch. "You're certainly not shy," I said, voice even. My friends chuckled, but it was hollow, brittle. Then everything stopped. The chatter, the background hum. A stillness crawled over the bar. I could feel it, like something ancient had just opened its eyes. I had a wad of chewing tobacco tucked in my cheek, picked up the habit from my uncle back home. Without thinking, I leaned in close and spat right in Calvin's eye. He jerked back, blinking hard, hands flying to his face. That was the moment. I stood up fast and slammed my fist straight into his throat. The sound wasn't a crack, it was a thud, a sickening, wet one. Calvin reeled, chair scraping and toppling. He hit the floor hard, gagging, fingers clutching at his neck like he could drag air back into his lungs. "Take it outside," someone barked. Maybe the bartender. Maybe God. Didn't matter. It was just a voice. distant behind the roaring in my ears. Calvin was already getting up, but something had changed. No swagger this time, no smug grin, just raw, unfiltered rage. We shoved through the back door and spilled into the alley behind the rusty stag. The cold hit like a slap, sharp, sudden, but I hardly noticed. The only thing I felt was the adrenaline boiling in my veins. The alley stretched narrow between two old brick buildings, bathed in weak flickering light from a busted street lamp. Steam rose from Calvin's body, his breath fogging the air in short, angry bursts. He turned slowly, face smeared with blood and sweat, eyes burning. "You little college fuck," he rasped. His voice was shredded from the punch to his throat, but it carried something deeper, hatred that didn't come from pain but from something festering longer. He came at me fast, faster than I expected. I barely got my arms up in time to block the first hit. It landed hard against my forearm, sent a jolt all the way to my shoulder, fingers tingling. I staggered, reached into my jacket. My hand closed around the Coke bottle. Cold, heavy, real. I swung. The bottle cracked against his head with a sickening crunch like splitting wet wood. Calvin reeled back, blood pouring down his face in thick sheets, but he didn't fall. He just smiled. It was awful. Broken teeth, blood on his lips, eyes wild. And I knew in that moment, this man had been hit like this before, probably worse, and he didn't care. He lunged again. I snapped a kick into his knee, hard and fast, aiming low. It folded inward with a pop that made my stomach turn. Calvin shouted, slammed into the wall with a grunt, but still he kept coming. Behind me, my friends were shouting, names, curses, fear, but it was all a blur, just static behind the violence. Then bang. One gunshot, clean, loud, final. Everything stopped. My breath caught in my chest. Calvin froze, mid-charge, blood trailing down his cheek and neck. And then a man stepped from the shadows at the mouth of the alley. He wasn't a cop, wasn't a local. I'd never seen him before, not once in all my time at that school. But he held a gun, one-handed, relaxed, like it belonged there, like he did. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. "I'd say that's enough," he said, calm as a whisper in a storm, like he was calling a poker game, not breaking up a near homicide. Calvin turned slowly to face him. And that's when it happened. The rage, gone. Not fear, exactly. Something worse. Recognition. He knew this man. And he was suddenly, terrifyingly small. "You've had your fun, Calvin," the man said. "Now it's time to go." No argument, no cursing, just one slow nod. Calvin limped away without another word, bleeding, broken, and quiet. The man watched him disappear into the dark, then turned to us. His eyes, steady, flat, not cruel, not kind, just present. He tipped his hat, an old battered thing, didn't belong in a place like this. "Best get inside, boys." And with that he turned and walked down the alley, vanishing into the dark like smoke. We didn't go back into the bar. We didn't say a word. We just left. No one ever talked about what happened. Not the owner, not the regulars, not even my friends. It was like the night had been wiped clean, like some unspoken agreement had settled over the town. But something had changed. Calvin was still around for a while. You'd see him sometimes, sitting outside the rusty stag late at night alone, staring down the alley like he was waiting. For what? I never knew. Then one day, he was just gone. No word, no search, just gone. Like the mountains took him back. And sometimes when I think about that night, I wonder, did I win that fight? Or were we all just extras in something older, deeper? Something watching from the shadows since long before we ever showed up. Small towns keep secrets. And some secrets keep you. I never imagined my senior year would end like that. Not in a million years. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, little cracks in the surface, tiny red flags waving in the wind, all hinting at something darker lurking underneath. I should have known Ryan wasn't just some edgy kid trying to stand out. But when you're 17, you don't think like that. You think the people you skip class with, get high with, share fries and dumb jokes with, you think they're like you, restless, bored, harmless. I grew up in a dead-end town where the biggest event of the year was the county fair, and the biggest drama was who got dumped at lunch. Everyone knew everyone. If you snuck out or said something dumb in class, your parents heard about it before you even walked through the door. That kind of place. I guess that's part of why I ended up with the wrong crowd. In a place like that, boredom doesn't just get under your skin, it crawls into your bones. Then there was Ryan. He didn't wear black because it was a trend. He wore it like armor. He'd talk about pentagrams and rituals and demons like they were real, like he'd met them for coffee. I figured it was just part of the act, a giant middle finger to his parents who were rich, church-obsessed, and barely noticed he existed. But the act never slipped. Not once. Ryan didn't just play the part. He was the part. Derek was different, quieter, sadder. His mom was a drunk, the kind that passed out with a cigarette still burning. His dad was long gone, left one night and never came back. Derek spent more nights on Ryan's couch than in his own bed. He always looked tired, like life had wrung him out too soon. There was this tension in him, like a wire stretched too tight. You didn't notice it at first, but once you did, it never left you. Somehow the three of us just clicked. We became inseparable. The usual misfit stuff, smoking weed in cornfields, breaking into boarded-up houses, tagging old sheds with dumb slogans. We'd scream into the wind, saying how much we hated this town, hated our lives. It all felt harmless, just noise to drown out the silence. And then came that night. It was the week before Halloween. Ryan said he was throwing a party. "My folks are out of town," he told us, that crooked grin on his face like he just pulled off a heist. "It's gonna be big, like huge." His house was in one of those picture-perfect suburbs on the edge of town. Identical two-story homes, fake shutters, pristine driveways. The kind of place where nothing bad ever happens. Or at least that's what people like to think. When we got there, the place was packed. Everyone from school, some creepy older guys I didn't recognize, girls in tight tops and glassy eyes. The air reeked of booze, sweat, and cheap weed. The walls vibrated from bass-heavy music. Someone passed me a pill I couldn't name. Everyone was either laughing too loud or dancing like they couldn't feel their own feet. But Ryan, he kept pacing, grinning, whispering. "There's more," he said over and over, his eyes gleaming. "A surprise. Something you'll never forget." I figured it was a prank. A fake seance maybe, or a jump scare for TikTok. We were high, half drunk. I laughed and nodded, ready to go along with whatever dumb thing he had planned. Around 11, Ryan clapped his hands and shouted over the music, "All right, everyone downstairs, it's time." The basement was nicer than you'd expect. Carpeted, pool table, old movie posters, gaming setup with a ceiling projector. It should have been another blurry night of couch cushions and Mario Kart. But the moment I stepped into that room, something shifted. The air felt thick, too thick, like walking underwater. People gathered in a lazy circle on the floor, the only light a single desk lamp that cast weird shadows. No one was talking. Everyone kept glancing toward the corner. A door. Closed. Ryan and Derek stood beside it, just grinning. But not the fun kind. Their faces were lit in a way that made their eyes look too wide, too bright, like they were about to unwrap something bloody and raw. Then Ryan yanked the door open. She was there, tied to a chair, gagged. Her clothes were filthy, arms lashed with what looked like an orange extension cord. I froze. My buzz died in a second. It was Laya. People called her Crazy Laya. The homeless woman who wandered downtown talking to herself, pushing that rusted cart full of cans and stuffed animals. Everybody knew her. Nobody really saw her. And now, she was in Ryan's basement. "What the fuck is this?" I croaked, my throat tightening. My voice barely broke the silence. Ryan turned to me, calm as hell. "Tonight," he said, voice almost warm, "we play a game." Derek stepped forward, opened his hand. "Darts. A human dartboard," he whispered, smiling like it was an inside joke. A few people laughed. Not loud, not real, just enough to make my skin crawl. I waited, for the punchline, for someone to laugh, to say, "Gotcha," for Ryan to untie her and reveal it was all some messed up prank. Maybe she'd jump up with stage blood on her arms and we'd all groan and call it stupid and edgy and move on. But Ryan didn't laugh. He stepped up to her, calm, like he was tossing darts at a board in his garage. And then he threw one. It stuck, right in her arm. Laya let out a muffled, garbled scream, jerking against the cords. Her whole body twisted in pain, eyes wide and pleading. A few people gasped. A few didn't move at all. The rest just watched. Derek followed. His throw landed just below her collarbone. Someone actually cheered. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. My legs felt heavy, like my feet had grown roots. I kept telling myself this had to be fake. Had to be. But the smell of sweat, fear, and blood in that small basement crushed every lie I tried to believe. A few others stepped forward. Not everyone. Some were as frozen as I was, eyes wide, lips trembling, the color drained from their faces. But enough of them, enough moved. And that's when the horror settled in, like thick tar crawling through my veins. This wasn't just some dark Halloween joke. This was real. This was wrong. And we were in it. Deep. I stared at Laya, bound in that scuffed-up folding chair, chalk symbols scrawled beneath her feet. And every part of me screamed, "Get out! This is not a joke. This is not a party. This is something else entirely. This is insane," I finally said, my voice cracking through the silence like a snapped branch. "Let her go." Ryan turned slowly, the smile draining from his face. His eyes, God, they were flat, empty, like staring into a TV turned to static. "You don't get it," he said, quiet and deliberate. "This is bigger than a game." Derek moved toward a duffel bag in the corner. His hands were too steady. He unzipped it and pulled out something long. Something that caught the basement light and sent a sharp glint across the room. A knife. Not a kitchen knife. Not even a hunting knife. Something ceremonial. Curved. Its edge stained with something brownish red, dried and crusted. Its handle wrapped in leather, symbols etched along the spine. "We offer her," Derek said, voice soft like a prayer, "to the king." My stomach twisted. I backed up without realizing it. I wanted to vomit. My ears rang. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a scare tactic. They were serious. They were going to kill her. I turned to bolt, to scream, to do something. But before I could move, someone stepped into the doorway. Ryan's older brother, Zach. I hadn't even noticed him until now. He was standing there, camcorder in hand, red light blinking. He'd been recording the whole damn thing, watching, silent, still. "You leave," Ryan said sharply, no trace of charm left in his voice. "And this tape goes to the cops, or your folks." Blackmail. If we ran, if we screamed, if we told, we were the monsters. We were part of it, complicit, just by being there. I looked around. The spell was breaking for some of them. One girl was crying, hands over her mouth, mascara streaking down her cheeks. A couple guys looked pale, like they might puke. But no one moved. We were deer, caught in the brights. That's when I felt a hand on my arm, a whisper near my ear. "I'm calling the cops," someone breathed. It was Emma, Junior, long brown hair. We had chem together, maybe spoke twice all year. Her hand trembled as she clutched her phone, hidden in her purse, screen already glowing. She was dialing. Now. I nodded quickly and stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the view as she hit call. Across the room, Ryan dragged Laya into the center. The chalk symbols circled around her like a child's drawing of a ritual, messy, unbalanced. But Ryan moved with a kind of reverence, placing her inside the ring like a precious offering. He raised the knife. His face. It wasn't joy. It wasn't power. It was something deeper, like he was becoming someone else. His eyes wild, mouth twitching with a warped grin. Laya's body writhed, her screams barely audible behind the gag. The basement's fluorescent light buzzed above, casting a sickly yellow hue on everything. The room was silent now. No more laughter, no more giggles. Just the weight of reality pressing in on everyone. Then, sirens. That blessed, high-pitched wail. Red and blue lights flashed against the tiny basement windows. Tires screeched above. "Fuck," Derek hissed, head whipping toward the door. Ryan's face twisted. Fury, confusion. His grip tightened on the knife as he turned on the crowd. "Who the hell?" I didn't wait. I ran. Straight into him, shoulder first, slammed into his ribs with everything I had. He stumbled, gasping, knife clattering to the floor. Derek lunged, too slow. I dove, snatched the knife, blade cold and slick in my hand, and without thinking, without breathing, I dropped to my knees and started sawing at Laya's bindings. The basement exploded into chaos. Screams, crashing furniture, bodies stumbling over each other. Some kids bolted for the stairs, shoving and tripping in their panic, knocking over drinks and chairs. Others stood frozen, mouths wide, eyes wider, unable to process what they just witnessed. Laya, now free, ripped the gag from her mouth and let out a scream that cut through the madness. Raw, piercing, human. A sound I'll never forget. Then, bang. The basement door flew open. Cops stormed in, guns raised, shouting over the chaos. Hands up, now!" Ryan was still scrambling toward the knife, fingers brushing the hilt, when two officers tackled him hard. The sound of his body slamming the floor echoed like a gunshot. They pinned him, one knee in his back, his face shoved into the carpet, screaming curses through clenched teeth. Derek tried to run. He darted toward the side door, but didn't make it far. An officer dropped him with a flying tackle, twisting his arms behind him as he howled in pain. The rest of us, we just stood there, stunned, shaking, some crying, some too numb to feel anything at all. We weren't handcuffed, we weren't shoved to the ground, but we were prisoners just the same, caught in that terrible moment, unsure of what we were now. The aftermath was a blur. Sirens, flashing lights, the thick stench of sweat, fear, blood, an ambulance for Laya. Officers herding us upstairs one by one. They separated us, sat us down, and started asking questions. Who knew? Who helped? Who watched and said nothing? Who watched and said nothing? Most of us weren't charged. The police called us witnesses. Some even said bystanders, as if just standing there made us clean. But that word didn't sit right with me. We hadn't stopped it. We'd let it go too far. Too long. Ryan and Derek, different story. Turns out that basement that night wasn't the beginning. It was the end of a string of things no one wanted to believe. The cops found tapes, dozens, photos, old camcorder footage going back years, things that had happened before, rituals, people, things too twisted to speak aloud. And Ryan, he was always at the center of it, calm, smiling, proud. He was sentenced to life, no parole. Derek got 25 years. Zach, Ryan's older brother, the one filming, he got 15. I left not long after, packed up, changed states, deleted every number in my phone that reminded me of that town, that basement, that night. I started over, changed my name in some places, told people my old life was boring, uneventful. But the truth still finds me. I still see their faces sometimes, in dreams, in mirrors, in the spaces between night and sleep. I hear Laya's scream when the world gets too quiet. I think of Ryan standing in that chalk circle with a knife and a smile like he was just getting started, And I wonder, how many times had he done it before? How many Ryans are out there now, smiling at their classmates, planning another party, another game, another victim? I try not to think about it, but I always do, because I was almost one of them, just another bored kid in a small town. I grew up in a quiet little town in the Midwest, one of those places where screen doors creaked all summer and folks left their front doors unlocked without thinking twice. Everyone knew everyone, and even their dogs by name. The biggest scandal we ever had was when Mr. Donnelly's nephew tried to steal a Snickers bar from the BP gas station. People gossiped about that for days. It wasn't exciting, but it felt safe. At least, that's what we told ourselves. My name's Brandon. I was 9 when I learned that feeling safe and being safe aren't the same thing. We lived in a plain little row of townhouses on the edge of our neighborhood. Beige siding, 2 stories, postage stamp front lawns. The parking lot was a patchy stretch of cracked asphalt with faded white lines and oil stains, shared by all the residents. Each unit had one of those big, rectangular front windows, the kind that let in all the light and let out all your privacy. At 9, my world was simple. I rode bikes with the neighborhood kids, played hide and seek until the streetlights buzzed on, and spent evenings wrapped in a blanket burrito watching whatever cartoon reruns were on cable. But I was a nervous kid. Always had been. I jumped at slamming doors, left nightlights on in 2 rooms, and double-checked my closet every single night. I loved horror movies, but I always regretted watching them the second the credits rolled. There was something about the dark that gnawed at me, especially windy nights, when the streetlights flickered and shadows jerked and twitched across the pavement like they were alive. I never expected those fears to come true. It was late November, just a few days after Thanksgiving. That biting cold had settled in, the kind that makes your breath fog out in little puffs and strips every last leaf from the trees. The wind scraped the bare branches together like skeletal fingers tapping on a window pane. That night, Mom was going out for dinner with some friends. Before leaving, she kissed the top of my head, told me not to stay up too late, and handed the reins over to my sister, Amber. She was 16 and the 2 of us didn't exactly get along. She thought I was clingy. I thought she was evil. She mostly stayed holed up in her room, laughing with her friends on speakerphone while I camped out on the living room couch with my blanket and cartoons. The only light came from the TV, a flickering blue glow that painted weird shapes on the ceiling. The rest of the room was in shadow, except for the orange glare from the street lamp outside the window. It cast long lines through the blinds, like prison bars across the floor. I glanced out the window during a commercial, just out of habit. The parking lot looked normal, a few beat-up cars parked in their usual spots. But then, I saw something. A shape. At first, I thought it was nothing. A trick of the light. Maybe the reflection off the glass. But then it shifted slightly. Someone was standing out there, near one of the cars, just standing. My breath hitched. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. It was a man, an old man, maybe in his 70s. His skin looked almost gray in the streetlight, like clay left out in the cold. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. His mouth hung slightly open like he just started to speak but forgot what he was saying. And his eyes, those eyes, they were sunken, small, and locked directly on me. I couldn't move. I didn't even blink back. I just stared, frozen, every nerve in my body screaming. My skin crawled with that electric feeling you get when someone's watching you for too long. But this was different. It felt like he was seeing something in me I didn't even understand. Then, as quietly as he'd appeared, he turned and walked off into the shadows at the far end of the lot. No rush. No glance away. Just gone. I sucked in a breath like I'd been underwater. Then I bolted. The blanket dropped behind me like I'd been shot. I ran down the hall, skidding to a stop outside Amber's room and shoved the door open. "Amber," I gasped. There's a man outside." She looked up from her phone, chewing on a piece of gum, barely blinking. What? There's a guy, an old man. He was standing by the cars. He was just staring at me. She let out a groan, dramatic and bored. Brandon. Seriously? It's probably just someone walking their dog or something. God, you're such a baby. I clenched my fists. My throat tightened. I wanted to yell, to make her understand, but I knew that look. She'd already made up her mind. She'd blame it on cartoons. Again. So I turned and walked back, slower this time. The hallway suddenly felt way too long. I wrapped the blanket back around me, tighter than before, like it could protect me. The cartoons were still playing, but I wasn't watching anymore. I kept glancing at the window, trying to tell myself it didn't happen, that maybe I'd imagined how still he was, how gray, how he didn't blink. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. Then the phone rang, loud, sudden, jarring. I jumped. My heart was still pounding from what I'd seen earlier. I sat there on the couch, blanket clutched around me like armor, eyes darting toward the front window. Amber didn't even glance up from her phone as she muttered, "It's Mom." Picked up the cordless phone, hand still a little shaky. "Hello? Brandon, sweetheart." Mom's voice came through warm but distracted, muffled slightly by the clinking of silverware and the chatter of restaurant conversation in the background. "Can you take the trash out for me before bed?" I gripped the receiver tighter. I almost said it. I almost told her about the man, about the way he stared through me like I wasn't even there. But I didn't. Maybe it was embarrassment. Maybe it was the way Amber had rolled her eyes earlier, like I was just some scared little kid who still checked under the bed. "Okay," I said quietly. The trash bins were all the way at the far end of the parking lot, right where the cracked pavement faded into the tree line. In the daytime, it wasn't a big deal. At night, though, it felt like walking off the edge of the world. I zipped my jacket up to my chin, shoved my hands deep into my sleeves, and stepped outside. The cold hit me like a slap, sharp, dry, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke and dead leaves. The wind had picked up too, whistling through the trees, rattling bare branches that scraped against one another like brittle bones. The old street lamp buzzed above me, flickering just enough to make my stomach twist. Shadows danced across the pavement, long and twitchy. I kept my head down, the trash bag swinging at my side, trying not to imagine anything hiding in the dark. My sneakers tapped softly against the concrete. Every step sounded way too loud. My breath fogged the air in quick little puffs. I tossed the trash into the bin and spun around, ready to bolt back to the house. And then, he was there, 15 feet away, crouched low between two parked cars, just peeking out from behind the hood of an old blue sedan. I only saw the top of his head, his eyes and forehead. But I knew. It was him. That same paper gray skin, those same eyes, black and flat and wrong. He wasn't blinking, just staring. And then he spoke. "Hey, come here." His voice was like sandpaper, raspy and dry, barely more than a whisper, like leaves skittering across concrete. It didn't sound human. Not really. My legs locked. My brain screamed, "Move, run, do something." But I was frozen in place, heart thudding like a drum behind my ribs. Then he sank back out of view, disappearing behind the car like a ghost sliding underwater. That snapped something in me. I ran. I tore down the parking lot, feet pounding the ground, heart in my throat. As I passed the cars, I turned. Just a quick glance, I wish I hadn't. They were there. With him. 2 women. Elderly, maybe in their 70s, but twisted, bent. They crouched low like animals, completely naked, their sagging skin loose and clinging to their bones like wet tissue. Their mouths were stretched wide into grotesque, too big grins, and their black glossy eyes didn't blink. The man, he was wearing some kind of costume, a rabbit suit maybe? But it wasn't right. It looked homemade, stitched together out of different fabrics, filthy and sagging, with long ears that flopped to one side like it had been left to rot in a basement. They were waiting. Then I heard it. Movement. Fast, irregular footsteps. Slap, 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 bare feet slapping the pavement behind me. And then a giggle. High-pitched, childlike, followed by a whisper, close, right behind my ear. Come back. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. I just ran until I slammed into the front door, flung it open, and threw myself inside. I locked it. Every bolt, every latch, my fingers shaking so badly I missed the deadbolt twice. I staggered back from the door, gasping, vision blurry with tears. "Amber!" I shouted, voice cracking. "Amber!" She finally came out, her expression annoyed. "What the hell is wor—" Then she saw my face. Her mouth snapped shut. "Brandon? What happened?" I told her everything in one messy stream of gasps and sobs. Her arms folded, her brow furrowed. I could see it. The doubt. The he's just being dramatic look. Then, tap, a knock on the living room window, slow, deliberate, not loud, just steady. Amber turned toward the sound. Her face went pale. We didn't move. Tap. We called the police. They arrived in less than 10 minutes. Flashlights swept across the parking lot, bouncing off windshields and tree trunks. The officers spoke in low voices, tight and clipped. They found nothing. No footprints, no forced entry. Nothing to prove anything had happened. Except, near the trash bins caught on a bare, thorny branch, they found a piece of fabric. Pale pink, torn, dirty, stained with something dark and crusted. They took it with gloved hands. Nobody smiled. One officer looked back toward our window and shook his head slowly, like something didn't sit right. Mom got home shortly after. Her face was tight with worry. She hugged me hard, whispering, "It's okay now. Everything's fine." But her heartbeat was fast. Too fast. She was scared too. For weeks I couldn't go outside after dark. I barely slept. And when I did, I'd see their faces. Those eyes. Those grins. I'd wake up soaked in sweat, screaming. I'm 19 now. It's been 10 years. I moved away for college. Far from that quiet little town. Far from that memory. I don't talk about it. Most people wouldn't believe me anyway. But when I visit home for the holidays, sometimes I still feel it. That tickle on the back of my neck. That pressure in the air. And every now and then when the house is silent, when everyone's asleep and the world feels too still, I hear it again. That same whisper, just outside the glass. Come back.